I want to officially welcome you to today's webinar, The Strategy Behind the Houston Dynamo's Storytelling Off the Pitch. We have a great guest here today, Juan Loya from the Houston Dynamo. He's recently joined us for an awesome inside look at their media library. And now he's going to share a little bit about their storytelling strategy and why, off the pitch storytelling is so important to their organization. Just to tell you a little bit about us, my name is Kristen Twyford. I'm the content director here at Libris by PhotoShelter. And Libris empowers effortless visual storytelling, both through our tools and through webinars like this. And with that, I want to go ahead and hand it over to Juan. Thank you so much for being here. I am so excited about your talk. Yoav and I got a preview just yesterday, and it was fantastic. So you guys are in for a really good show, and we can't wait to hear your questions at the end. Juan, welcome.
Thank you. Happy to chat with you guys, and thanks for the invite. And hopefully we can talk about some interesting things that we're doing in Houston. So just to give you a background, if you don't know that much about the Houston Dynamo and the Houston Dash, the Houston Dynamo is a Major League Soccer team in Houston, Texas. We've been in the city since 2006. The Houston Dash has been there since 2014. I'm the creative director, and I've been with the club since 2010. And so what I wanted to focus on today is just kind of our approach on our visual storytelling and how it's evolved over the years, and mainly focusing on the last 3 years. So, what most people, soccer is a global sport, and when you think about soccer clubs around the world, what's distinguishing about them is that they're very synonymous with the cities that they play in. So when you think about teams like Barcelona or Liverpool or Monterrey, like the name of the team and the name of the city are just intertwined in a way that just really defines both the city and the team. And so that's kind of been our approach over the last 3 or 4 years. How do we make Houston Dynamo synonymous with the city of Houston? And so these images here are just some examples of over the years our approach of putting players in Houston locations, partnered with Houston institutions. That's the city bayous, art around the city, partnering with local hospitals like MD Anderson, and just trying to find ways to visually make a connection between our soccer club and the city. And here's an example of us being in the community with our fans, obviously, and just kind of showing that connection between our creative team and the players and the fans and everything. So what I thought I'd start with was just kind of going through the last 3 years of Dynamo storytelling and kind of show you the journey that we've been on as a club. And so what we've decided is that our approach as a club and as a marketing department is to tell the story of Houston and kind of show our love of the city, and find as many ways as possible to communicate that we're a Houston team and that we love Houston and we want that to be part of our identity. And so finding ways to tell that story visually is kind of been the challenge and the fun part of our job. And whenever I think about Houston sports, one of the most iconic things that you can really think of is stuff like the Houston Astros jersey from the 1970s that had that tequila sunrise pattern on it, that everybody around the world knows that that's a Houston design kind of classic example of Houston iconography. So, in 2018, our jerseys that we launched referenced that Houston iconic sports uniform. We put our own spin on it. It was a black jersey. Up until that point, we had only ever had one other black jersey in the Houston Dynamo. And so this jersey was very, very well received. All of our fans immediately understood what we were referencing. It became one of the top selling jerseys that the league had that year, across all teams. And I think it was even featured in GQ as a summer, apparel item that you wanted in your closet because it was that popular. But the way we took that story is we didn't want to just tell a story about the Astros. Obviously, we wanted to make it identifiable to our club, and so we told that story in the sense of tying it back to Dynamo and the concept of energy. What we did, for a teaser campaign was to start telling the story of the jersey by focusing in on the stripes and using the stripes to tell a story of motion, energy, a power surge. And so we had these social media teasers leading up to the release of the jersey to kind of showcase the ideas of energy around the jersey and make it kind of integral to our club and broadly, the city of Houston. And then once we actually released the jersey, we partnered with a local photographer named Zach Allen, who is one of the best light painting photographers in the country. He's a local photographer, but we partnered with him and we took photos all around the city. We highlighted the jersey in front of murals that are here in the city of Houston, and through his photography, continued to tell that story of energy, but tying it to iconic Houston sports, and just trying to find different ways to tell an interesting story for our fans. And like I said, this jersey itself ended up becoming a very, very popular item. Obviously we brought in players as well. And then, with our other jersey, the orange one, we continued that visual element of light painting and energy. And this was a photo shoot that we did with the players at the stadium, and kind of continuing that element of motion. And that year in 2018, the team won the US Open Cup championship. And so we had an opportunity to do more of this light painting imagery with the trophies. Here are some before and after images of the trophy. And when we won the game, we had this imagery to push out on social media to announce the championship that we won. So that was our 2018 season. And then going into 2019, a lot of this imagery that you see here in this storytelling was localized in the graphics department, which was myself and 2 other designers. But the story we were trying to tell, I think we could tell that the limitations of it were that it was very visual. There wasn't a tagline. There wasn't like messaging beyond like the images that we were showing you. And so going into the 2019 season, we had more effort with other departments, and specifically with the video department, of trying to come up with a campaign that had more to say, that continue that story of honoring Houston. And so as a creative team, the graphics and video, what we came up with was a campaign called Hold It Down. And what Hold It Down kind of represents is, again, celebrating Houston. This imagery here is from Travis Scott's Astro World. And you see people, throwing up the H. It's a very Houston, significant Houston like phrase. What it down is, and then throwing up the H is very iconic to Houstonians as a way of representing the city. And the great thing about it is, our fans already do that. There's no need for us to educate them on, how to represent Houston this way. And so we really tried to make that a central part of our messaging in 2019. And we did it through photos, we did it through video. And while, that the phrase "hold it down" wasn't our external marketing that year, it was pretty central to everything we did visually that year. Whenever we released the jersey, we had partnerships with Bun B, who's a local rapper, Gonzo247, who's a mural artist. We invited them to be part of the story that we were trying to tell, and they, used the same language and phrases and the storytelling that we were trying to do. And then that year, this was, obviously we had nothing to do with this, but when James Harden came on board as a co-owner of the team, we obviously saw that was fitting into the story that we were trying to tell about making the Dynamo very central to the city of Houston. when he came on board, we had a photo shoot with him at the stadium, and he participated in a video shoot for us. He had a message for the city, a message to our fans, and since he is somebody who's closely associated with Houston, he obviously has the same way of talking about Houston as well. So he's throwing up the H. He's saying hold it down. He obviously kind of helped us solidify that message as a club. And so that was, again, hold it down wasn't necessarily an external message, but in 2020, the creative team as a group kind of became more formally solidified as a group. Prior to this year, the video team was more on the PR side, but now they're in the marketing team. We report as one group, the creative team, and this is the year that we finally kind of made hold it down the external message of the club that replaced our previous slogan, which was Forever Orange, which is very Forever Orange is very Dynamo centric, but it's not very Houston centric, and hold it down became more of a Houston rallying cry. So this is a video that was produced by our video team, and I'm going to play this now.
H-Town. For 7 million people, this is home. Whether you were born here or got here as fast as you could, we are all a part of this community. A community of hard workers, a community of innovators, a community of dreamers. To all of us, this is home. So what's up, H-Town? We gonna make them feel us. So let's do what we do. Hold it down.
Awesome.
So that was the launch video of the campaign. It kind of was our brand manifesto. It explained, what feelings we were trying to emote, what our approach to storytelling for this year was going to be, and obviously that worked its way into all the images we took with our players. On our media days, we asked them, obviously we did all the normal things that we did, which is to take action photos and portraits, but we were really trying to get them to represent Houston in their poses and everything. For our women's team, the Houston Dash, we did the same thing. We didn't have formal media days yet. That's still on the calendar, but we had individual shoots with the players in Houston locations, kind of representing and being proud of Houston and showing that pride in the city. And so when it came time to launch our jersey for this year, there was a league-wide event at New York Fashion Week where the big focus was on fashion and high styling. But we did our own photo shoot here in Houston at the Museum of Fine Arts, where there have been other fashion photo shoots and video shoots here. It's a very cool location for us to kind of play up again, just like the city of Houston and areas of town that people know. When it came to launch the Houston Dash jerseys this year, we decided, again, just reiterating, trying to find ways to tell a story of our city and tie it to our club. So everybody in Houston knows that the 59 bridges, well, there's 6 bridges on US Interstate 59 that light up at night. They change colors depending on what the events are. And it's just kind of a cool Houston thing that everybody here in Houston knows about. And so we did a photo shoot at the bridges. Really got a lot of positive feedback from these photos. Everybody was like, it looks like, a really cool music video, or something that's just really high end and cool, and showing off these jerseys. And obviously we had video components to this as well. But these photos were just really, really popular, and really highlighted both the club and the city, which we keep trying to do. And then, in addition to just areas of town that, that people are familiar with, MD Anderson has been our jersey sponsor for a few years now, and they're a great partner they're a local institution, but they're also a globally known cancer hospital. And so we've done photo shoots, partnered with MD Anderson. This is Eli. He's a cancer survivor who has a great story. He's participated in, First Kick and just different initiatives with the club and our partner. And having the opportunity to do storytelling through photography with our partners is just another way of continuing to tell a Houston story. And that's been really successful for us. And then I guess the last thing I wanted to talk about was the city of Houston, like a lot of cities around the world, has great art, has art that decorates the walls of the city. And Houston is no exception. But our specific home in the city of Houston is East Downtown, and Edo, as it's referred to, is just where a lot of this wall art, murals, graffiti, it's located. And so over the years, we've tried to incorporate that into our visual identity. But this year we commissioned new murals that could represent our brand and our visual identity around the city of Houston. So we had an amazing artist named Anat Ronan create some murals, and Zenful, another local artist, create murals. One of them was at the BBA Stadium where we play, and even though the stadium has been there since 2012, we've never had an exterior mural done at the stadium. And it's something that was always on the wish list of something that we wanted to do, but we finally had an opportunity to put a mural in the stadium. And then Anat's mural is very close to the stadium. It's over by Minute Maid Park, where obviously the Astros play, and there's a lot of foot traffic and by that mural. And it's kind of become, the largest mural or any kind of installation that we've done, and it was very, very well received. It got international press because Darwin Quintero, who's the player up on the front there, throwing up DH, it got international attention for that mural going up. And then that picture of Christian Ramirez, he's kicking the ball, and that kind of came from another one of our photo shoots where, some of our players, do these action shots, and it's helpful for making cool art like this. Here's another shot of the Dash side of the mural. And with the Houston Dash, this was the first time we ever had any kind of mural or art out in the city for that team, and it was just really, really impactful to get the brand of the Houston Dash out into Houston. Here's a shot of the one at our stadium. That one is located, right in between the box office and the team store, and so it's just a high traffic area on a game day. Like, you'll see people out there standing in front of it, getting their picture taken. It's just a great mural for us.
So cool.
And here's just another shot of that mural. And this is just to show kind of how the city of Houston has embraced this art. All of the art around East Downtown is Instagram worthy. That's where everybody likes to take pictures to post on their own social media, and just having these murals kind of tell our story has been invaluable for getting us into the minds and hearts of Houston. And that's mostly what I have to show you today. I kind of just wanted to shout out my creative team, the videographers and the graphic designers who put all of the thought and creative intent around all of these images and the story we're trying to tell. They're the ones who we conceptualize. What are we trying to say? How does it fit into the landscape of Houston? Everybody on my team is a native Houstonian. We all grew up here and love the city and are trying to find ways to tell Houston's story through the Houston Dynamo, the Houston Dash. And that's pretty much it.
Awesome. Thank you. clear in your team's work is your passion for the city and you know, the fact that you really want to tell Houston's story. So to see it all kind of come to life and to see it visually is just so cool. And I know a couple of members of your team are here, so thank you guys for being here. One, thank you so much. That presentation was amazing. We already have a lot of shout outs coming in and a lot of questions. So I want to go to some of those and make sure you get all your questions in. We'll try to get to everybody's different questions. Yoav, you want to kick it off with one of the questions
Sure,
from the
definitely. And a couple of comments before even we jump into the questions. A couple of people shared, so dope. And the light painting is fantastic. Nice branding mechanism, very recognizable, especially, I think these were right when you were showing the light effects and all that stuff. So people, that was really amazing stuff. And the murals too got a lot of love. So we'll start it off here. In telling your story, do you feel that photos or graphics do a better job?
Well, you know, so my career has been as a graphic designer, and so you know, you might think that I might have a bias towards graphics, but the truth is that that I'm actually just a bigger fan of just great photo storytelling. I think that, and it helps that we have talented photographers, you know, the ones that we freelance with and the ones who work on staff. They are amazing, you know, visual storytellers on their own. So my preference is just strong photos to tell a story. I think that they, you know, especially when it comes to the Jersey photo shoots that I showed, they don't need any other kind of embellishment when it comes to graphics. We just need to, you know, find a cool story to tell through photography, through the environments that we're trying to take these photos in, and that's always been my preference.
Awesome. And it's so cool to see all of these different types of content kind of playing off each other. Like the one on the bridge, you've got that video content that works in, you know, some graphics content and the still images, and then seeing the mural comes from a photo. That back and forth between the photo and the mural is amazing. So cool. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, I really love that too. Here's a question. How do you get and keep everyone on the same page from multiple departments down to content creators, including freelancers?
Yeah, so so it definitely helps when you know, as I stated, you know, in 2018, we didn't have a ton of coordination between what the graphics department was going to do and what the rest of the organization was going to do. You know, obviously we present our campaign and our brand ideas to the whole organization at the beginning of each year, but getting that buy-in, you know, kind of requires a lot of collaboration. And just candidly, it's been a lot easier now that video team and graphics team are one creative entity. And then when it comes to groups outside of that entity, the creative team, you know, our digital team who does amazing work on social media, you know, we work very closely because we're in the same department. We all report up through marketing. But then you might have a team like the sponsorship team who doesn't report to the same structure, but we still have to collaborate with them and tell them what our vision is for the season. So honestly, when it comes to the best practices or how you achieve that, you know, collaborative vision, it really is just communication. It's you know, letting people know from a very early stage, you know, what the creative vision is and, you know, what we're going to be doing to tell a compelling story. Because at the end of the day, you know, no matter what department you're in, you want to be a part of a compelling story. You don't want to be a part of, you know, something that's boring or you know, been done before. You want to be part of something unique. So for us as a creative department, communicating what our vision is, you know, at the beginning of the season or even earlier in the off season, is just it's a great way of just getting everybody on the same page.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of a follow-up that came in mid-question there, so jumping the queue here. How do you balance the two teams having unity with each other, yet their own standalone identity?
Yeah, that's a good question because it's something that we've had a lot of discussions about over the years. You know, since the Houston Dash came on board, it's an ongoing conversation about whether they have their own identity or if it should be more of a cohesive identity with the men's team. And you know, to be totally honest, it's gone back and forth over the years. But going back and forth kind of gives you the opportunity to see what you prefer and what works best, and kind of where we've landed this season. It has been very tied together, the men's team and the women's team, telling a cohesive story. And I think one of the reasons we landed there is because the larger story we were trying to tell is a story about the city of Houston, and so that we were trying to find ways to make that applicable to both the men's team and the women's team. Just made sense. So as I said, hold it down replaced Forever Orange as the Dynamo motto, and it replaced Dash On as the Dash motto. So both teams have the same messaging. They both have the same intent and visual narrative. And to me, like I said, having done both approaches, that to me is a stronger, better way to communicate, the identities of both teams, because it kind of does create a one club mentality, which is just a really strong narrative.
Nice. That's really interesting. Changing pace here a little bit. What kind of media buys are you guys doing? Billboards, ads, social, Facebook? This was asked right after the murals.
Mm-hmm. So every year we've always done billboards, and I've never been like a huge fan of billboard campaigns. We do them, and they're obviously, like Houston in particular, like has a lot of billboards, so it makes sense in our market to do that kind of outdoor advertising. This year, having the opportunity to do those murals was great, because it's just a more artistic and more visually interesting way of kind of communicating your message than a sign that it's just one among many. So we do outdoor advertising, but our emphasis this year was more on the murals and trying to tell our story in that way. When it comes to digital advertising, that's a huge component of what we do. So definitely heavily more on the digital side than print, and almost everything that we do lives in a digital space.
And was the commercial or the video you showed us, was that like a TV commercial, or where was the intent, or I guess where did that show?
Yeah, so that was our launch to the campaign of Hold It Down. That was on social media. There was digital buys on that ad as well, and then we made different spots in the same style and vein that were ad buys that were more had a call to action at the end to buy tickets to the upcoming game. But that spot specifically was just kind of a brand manifesto that lived on our social media, and there was paid advertising behind it, but it didn't air on television. But like I said, there was other ads in the same style that were TV ads.
Cool.
Nice. I love the music in that.
Yeah.
That was fun. So next up, and keep those questions coming, guys. This is actually, both these questions are kind of moving into a more opinion retrospective. Are there any aspects you look back on from previous years or even this year that you would change or approach differently?
Yeah, definitely. Since I've been doing this for a while, each year is definitely a learning experience for me, just as somebody in a creative endeavor. And so I think the big one, and I don't know if I communicated this, that well, but some of those early campaigns were very, very heavy on just the visual ideas that we were trying to tell. Sometimes there was an earlier campaign that we had where we really, really leaned in on the idea of electricity, because that's what Dynamo, an actual Dynamo produces. And so we went really, really heavy on, and it's funny to me when I see the stuff that the LA Chargers are doing now, because it's very similar to what we did back then. But it's a lot of lightning bolts, it's a lot of bold iconography, and we're trying to tell a story, but without copy to match it, or a tagline or something that can just really get embedded in somebody's head beyond flashing images. Like it's not as impactful, and that was a big learning curve for me, because to me, like I love the visuals we create, and I want to believe that everybody gets every reference we're going for, but sometimes you really do have to be a lot more overt, and that's where that collaboration comes in, because I'm not the best copywriter in the world, but we have a PR department, a digital team, we have people on staff who can tell a story, that complements our visuals, and so that is something that I've learned over the years that is a really big component to the story you're trying to tell.
Yeah, that's great advice. I feel like we've talked so much about visual storytelling on these webinars, and it's nice to hear that kind of tip. I think you're absolutely right.
Agreed. All right, so we have a few questions here about since you guys are really representing Houston, and that's a big part of your storytelling. How much do you work with other teams in the city? Obviously, or I would imagine there was some collaboration with the Astros on the jerseys. What about any relationship with the Rockets and or the Texans, or just other teams outside of those teams?
So no like formal collaborations really. It's all pretty informal, and it helps that Houston, even though it's a big city, it can, at least in the sports world, can kind of feel like a small town. Like I know everybody who works at both, the Astros, the Texans, and the Rockets. I've had relationships with them for many years. My start in sports was with the Houston Astros, and employees of mine have gone on to work for the Rockets and the Texans. The lead designer over at the Texans right now is a former employee of mine, and so we just have relationships, and we talk and collaborate and share ideas. So in that respect, we do have informal collaborations. But when it comes to things like the mural or the jersey, those aren't necessarily like formal partnerships or anything like that. When it comes to this black jersey that referenced the Astros, that was very, very internal. It was just something that internally we were very interested in tying ourselves to. And so it isn't exactly like that Astros jersey, so there wasn't any need to like any kind of clearance or anything like that. It's more of a reference to it. And then when it comes to the mural that's over by Minute Maid Park, that they own the building that mural was painted on, so we obviously had to collaborate with them on purchasing that space for a period of time. But most of our visual strategy is just determined by our internal group.
Awesome.
Cool. Actually, it's a perfect follow-up to that question in terms of how can you describe a little bit the process or the differences in the process in getting internal corporate branding buy-in versus external public branding buy-in? So just how, when you guys were rebranding the new jerseys, the colors, the slogans, kind of the process of selling it internally and then also selling it to your fans and the public.
So it changes year to year, and I would say that even though I was I've been with the club since 2010. I didn't really start taking a leadership role in creating a brand campaign until about 2016. Because prior to that, I was just on the graphics department. But once I kind of became somebody who was tasked with creating a brand campaign for our season, it was a process of creating it internally with just our creative team, finding the best story that we wanted to tell and developing, and our season starts in February, March most years, and but our process for creating the campaign starts in the summer prior to that. Now we really do like to have a long time to develop it. So once we start getting into the fall, that's when we're presenting it to our bosses, our vice president over marketing, our chief marketing officer, and once we have buy-in from them, that's when it goes higher to the president and the whole organization. So by the time the season has ended, which is usually in November or December, we have a pretty good plan going into next season, so we can use that off season from December to February to execute on all the things that we've talked about and planned and designed. So it's a pretty long process, but I think that we've gotten pretty good at of creating a process around the story we want to tell. And then when it comes to getting approvals from different parts of the organization, usually the campaign isn't like super like out of the box. It isn't like changing anything that drastically. Changing our slogan from Forever Orange to Hold It Down was a bit more of a a process, but even with that, it's just telling the story and telling the intent behind why we're doing this. It wasn't hard or difficult to get buy-in from the organization, because I think everybody was on the same page about the overall intent, which is to just tie ourselves to the city of Houston.
Awesome. Yeah, we've got some great questions coming in. I love that question. I was wondering that too, so that was awesome. Be sure to keep getting your questions into the. Still have a bunch to get through. Yoav, you want to take a question?
Yes, and thank you to the person who asked this. I know they've been waiting. So this is part statement, part question. In the last 2 years, we've seen Ajax here in the Netherlands take a huge step in storytelling with a bus with the face of Frankie the Young in Barcelona as a cool highlight. What do you think of the level of storytelling at European soccer clubs? Is this an area where Europe is falling behind?
No, not to be honest. I've always, because, in total transparency, well, before I worked for the Houston Dynamo, I did not grow up as a huge sports fan. Like there was, I followed the NBA a little bit, but, I wasn't a big baseball or football guy. And so when I came on as a member of the Houston Dynamo organization, one of the places that I went to find inspiration was in European soccer and the stories that they were telling, because one of the things that really appealed to me about storytelling in Europe was, when it comes to American baseball and American football, they're very, very much rooted in the past, and telling stories about legacies of sports achievement, which is great. I mean, there's obviously really great content there. But what I love about soccer being a global sport that embraces art and design, it's called the beautiful game. Soccer all over the world is, there are soccer clubs, football teams that have been around for centuries, but even though they have that legacy, I love that European teams are constantly pushing the envelope and trying to seem new and modern. So balancing what that legacy of their team, but in a modern, fresh way, and pushing the envelope and trying to be new and exciting, I found very inspiring and impactful. And it just kind of opened me up to the idea that, we don't have to rely on the past. And, obviously the Dynamo is a much younger team. We've only been around for 15 seasons, but we have a legacy as well that, is part of our story. But we want every season to feel like a reinvention, a new piece of the puzzle, a new piece of the story that we're trying to tell.
Yeah, super interesting. I mean, I love what you said there about these teams that are decades or a century old at this point. They're balancing their tradition with sort of being on the cutting edge, and very much in the same way that you guys are. Even with 15 years tradition. Okay, so changing gears significantly here. I think the one question probably everyone's curious about, or we're all dealing with it in our own ways. How has your marketing changed, or how are you marketing this season? In the kind of coronavirus COVID-19 era.
So we're in a holding pattern until we know if we're going to be playing games later in the year. Our assumption is that at some point the season will resume in some way, but in the meantime, most of our content is kind of relying on telling the story of our past championships. It's doing a deep dive on who our players are as people, and so a lot of our messaging is around finding out, on a more personal level, the players who play for the Dynamo and the Dash, like who they are as individuals, and kind of finding interesting stories to tell about them. And so, some of it is just amplifying things that we did in a normal season anyway. We would always try to tell those human interest stories, but it's just focusing more on trying to tell and develop, stories, off the pitch, which again we would always do, but now it's just kind of more the focus versus, game to game training and tactics and things like that.
Awesome.
Okay, I'm going to throw it over to Kristen for a second, because somebody has a question that I want to about something that's on your IG right now.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Chris wanted to know kind of just what the story is with these the red kits, which I think is here.
Okay. Yeah. So it's funny because I guess it's red. I mean, fair point. But we always refer to it as kind of a reddish orange. It was kind of it was always intended to be just a different shade of orange, but it was definitely on the red side. It had these very thin pinstripes on it. But this is the only year we ever had a third kit. We always have a primary and an alternate. Most teams in professional soccer have third kits, but we've only ever had one in the history of our club, and this was the one that we came out with. And a third kit is an opportunity to kind of be outside of your brand, to kind of try to do something a little bit different. And so, a team that might have like a pink jersey as a third kit, even though that's not part of their brand identity. It's just kind of trying to find a way to do something new and different. So for ours, we went with this very, very red orange. And we wore this a couple of years, mostly in some of our international competitions, but that's kind of the story behind that jersey.
Nice. So is there
Seems
any...
like you got a lot of questions on this on Instagram too. Everyone wants to know the story.
That's funny, yeah.
Is there any kind of push to bring back third kits?
Yeah, that's more of a league-wide decision, though. And it also, there's a retail component to it as well. But yeah, they're very popular. Like, people definitely, and that's one of the things that I like about soccer in general. For the most part, people like it when you break out of the box a little bit and try new things. And jerseys are like very, very hotly debated. Like people have like very strong opinions when it comes to jerseys. But even like the ones that I find like very ugly, like over the after a couple of years, they kind of have like a retro charm to them. So like it's kind of cool to just do something different certain years, and then 10 years later it could be your favorite jersey.
Yeah, I feel like that's half the jerseys we were talking about
right,
in the beginning of the call, or just like at the time everyone hated them, and now people are like, oh, I gotta get the year one Toronto Raptors jersey.
Right.
How much freedom do you guys have in designing jerseys?
So technically the design, the authorship on jerseys is Adidas. So they give us a brief at the beginning of each jersey season, where we kind of tell them what story we're going to try to tell that year, what kind of visual elements we want them to include, and they will create a jersey based on the brief that we give them. But just candidly, like over the years, some years the jersey they've given us is with some minimal back and forth is what we end up with. And then other years we have a much stronger, no, we really, really want it to look like this, and that's, the 2018 jersey that we launched the presentation with is an example of that. We said, this is the jersey we want, and, they designed it technically, but, but that's, what we ended up with. And there are, a couple of years, in the past, in the more recent years where that's been the case. So yeah, the answer is, it's a collaboration between the teams and the league and Adidas. But some years we're very heavily involved, and other years it's, kind of what they give us.
Interesting.
Oh boy. His hats really caused a firestorm here. So you're saying Adidas designs every team's jersey? Or it sounds like it's a
Yes.
collaboration.
Yeah. So they definitely, and you can tell obviously when you see a jersey if it has very specific iconography in it that is like specific to that club, then there's a good chance that that team, obviously had a very strong, uh, creative brief, and so it goes both ways sometimes.
Nice. A lot of love for the jerseys. Um, okay, changing gears again, or maybe not. Are you finding this time right now, kind of when you're in this holding pattern, are you finding that this time has pushed you and your team to be more creative and innovative? And if so, how do you develop your ideas with your team?
Well, being separated physically is like a huge, a challenge to overcome, because ordinarily we're in an office together as a one creative team and we can bounce ideas off of each other, and somebody can get the ball rolling on an idea and somebody else can pick it up, and run with it. And you know if it's a video concept, we have a team of people who work together as a group to shoot, edit, and produce a video. And now that's happening, individually. So yeah, it's definitely a challenge. And as far as like, how we overcome those challenges, I think it definitely is, trying to reorient ourselves to think about what stories are we trying to tell, and how can we tell those stories with those limitations. And so when it comes to video, if we're trying to tell a player story, obviously we can't get them in the locker room and sit down with them and have them give an interview anymore. So just for trying to find creative ways to get them on camera. And so we've done some of that work, with the Houston Dynamo and the Houston Dash. And then when it comes to, graphics, a lot of that work is just trying to find, different stories that we want to tell from over the years, and how do we as a group tell those stories in new ways. We've looked at everything from doing animation to doing like different, more complex like infographics than we've done before. Usually, that isn't an area that we've spent the time on, but something that is very time intensive. Now is the perfect time for us to kind of try to do those kind of projects because we have the time to do it now.
Cool. All right, let's see. We have a few more questions, and I know we're kind of running low on time, so I'm just going to pick the one that I'm also the most curious about,
Sure.
selfishly. So, how hard was it to reach out to James Harden to get him to work with you? Were there lots of hoops to jump through? I think there was a pun intended there by the person who asked it. And was all of that before or after he became a part owner?
So the process for him to become an owner, was a lengthy one, and but once it was official, um, obviously there was going to be, a a launch of that partnership and that situation. And so as a marketing department, we were tasked with coming up with the best way that we wanted to tell that story. It was kind of a no-brainer that he would be involved in that effort. So there really wasn't any issues, because it made sense that he would be a part of that announcement. And so he came to the stadium. We did a photo shoot. We did a video shoot. He shot a video message. He did stuff for both teams. We got images of him, holding a Dash scarf. He was wearing a Dynamo jersey. He kicked the ball on the field, did a bunch of cool stuff with us. We got a lot of great content. And then so it really wasn't, it was just kind of like having that period of time that day to just get as much content as we could and make it part of the announcement. And anytime throughout the season that we have something to tell that involves James, we have that content. And then he's been at Dynamo games that we get content there as well when he's in the stands cheering on the team. That's also great content to share with our fans, because it shows that he's supporting the team and supporting the city. That's kind of his intention behind becoming an owner, is like showing that he's part of the city of Houston, and you know, it just speaks well of us that, you know, he viewed our team as part of Houston and wanted to be a part of that as well.
So cool.
Nice. And one of the last questions here, over the past few years, and it's I think being on the, you know, you said you've been there since 2010. I'm sure you have a lot of thoughts on this. Over the past few years, with the rise of social media and really different social media channels, and I think we're seeing that now with TikTok, every team getting on TikTok in the last, what, 6 months, 12 months. How is getting the story out to the public changed? You know, if you think back all the way to when you started with the team, up until now.
Well, when it comes to like specific social media platforms, like I remember, you know, there's a design conference that I attend every year called MLC Connect. It's for sports designers. And one of the first years of the conference, there was like this big debate about Snapchat, about like how much time do you spend, how, you know, do you create, you know, content for Snapchat? And, you know, at the end of the day, the answer is yes, because you create content for everything. You want, you know, your message to be everywhere. And so the same goes for TikTok. You know, obviously we are going to create content because we want to go where people are, right? So, and you know, just today we were talking about globally. You know, our women's team, the Houston Dash, is like #4 in engagement across all sports teams on TikTok, which is kind of crazy because
that's amazing.
Sorry, not all sports teams, all soccer clubs, I think. Yeah,
that's
but still #4. You know, going, you know, to every, you know, international you know, football club, you know, for our women's team to be #4 on TikTok is, you know, a great achievement. So it just kind of shows you got to be everywhere. You have to have content where people are, and so there's no reason to limit, you know, your strategy to just, you know, what you do day in, day out. We're always trying to find different cool ways to engage with people.
Yeah, I feel like that's an even bigger compliment since so much of this like Gen Z crowd is on TikTok, and so many of them love soccer. You know, this is the sport of this generation, and so to be #4 in that arena is amazing.
Yeah, it's a pretty cool achievement, and that's definitely hats off to our digital team. They, you know, they jump on, you know, every opportunity, so it's great.
That's awesome.
Cool. So just this is the last question, and I know we're really basically out of time here. So thanks everybody for sticking around and asking these great questions. Really enjoyed this conversation, and thanks a lot, Juan. And I'll let Kristen take us home. But the last question here is, how do you go about separating yourself from other MLS teams in general? And, you know, yeah, I get that's the question. How do you separate yourself from other MLS teams?
You know, we, you know, internally we pay a lot of attention to what the other teams are doing because we're fans of the game and fans of, you know, design, fans of storytelling, and so we want to see what, you know, the LA Galaxy are doing. We want to see what Atlanta United is doing, and you know, to be totally honest, like a lot of teams, you know, their intent and their approach is very similar to ours, which is celebrating the cities that they come from. But you know, what's great is that every city is unique and has its own different way of representing itself. And so Houston is, you know, obviously it's where I grew up. It's a city I love. It's the city that I want to like represent. And so just finding unique ways to tell a story of Houston, you know, automatically is going to differentiate us from any other MLS team. But then, you know, when it comes to visuals and you know, graphics and video, you know, I'm always trying to find inspiration outside of sports, outside of soccer. You know, what can we, you know, bring to our story that doesn't have anything to do with what other teams are doing. And I don't think that's unique to me. I think that's what a lot of teams do. They try to find, you know, different sources of inspiration, and sometimes there's a little bit of overlap, but for the most part, you know, every time, you know, we try to be unique to our city and our club. I think that's always the best recipe for success.
Awesome. Well, it is amazing to get a window into your team's work and your storytelling, and I can't thank you enough for putting together this amazing presentation and sharing it with us. And thank you to all of you guys. This has been an amazing Q&A. Thank you for your questions. We got a lot of great comments coming in, Juan, lots of people saying thank you and great job. So thank you so much for doing this. We also want to make sure you check out our other webinar together, the Inside Look with the Houston Dynamo. You can see how they organize their media library and organize all this content behind the scenes. So don't miss that. It's available right now on demand. And we hope that you guys will join us for future webinars. Our next one is next Friday, May 1st at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. Very different subject matter. We're going behind the scenes with the California Department of Water Resources. So moving away from sports and into government for the next week. And then the following week, we'll be doing a webinar with Hungry Harry's, a new startup for allergy-friendly baking mixes. So we've got a huge range coming up the next 3 weeks, but all great resources in terms of visual storytelling and workflow. And you can catch all of our past webinars at this bit.ly link if you want to go binge watch webinars. You got some time on your hands and you just can't get enough webinar content. We understand. Head over to that binge link. Juan, thank you so much for being here. That was fantastic.